Welcome to the National Real Estate Post. Frank Ray here. I have my good friend Ryan Hills with me up in Washington State. Before we get started, Ryan, I got to put a mention out there. This Wednesday, don't miss a webinar with Carl White and Dave Savage, where they are going to, and this plays right into today's show, by the way. But on this webinar, they're going to show you how top LOs are beating out the online lenders, or the iLenders is what we would call them. And so it's White Savage. I think that's a great name for a metal band.
Love it.
Don't you think so? White Savage.
Great.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But they're going to kick butt with it. Don't miss the webinar. There's a banner you see on your screen right now. It's over on your right. Click that. Or if you're on your mobile device, scroll down past the comments. You'll see the banner there where you can register. And on Facebook, there's a link around here somewhere. Now, Ryan, with respect to the whatever, okay, me and Brian have been out there talking a lot about, this lawsuit against the entire real estate industry, right? Where the DOJ is actually now subpoenaed data from CoreLogic because they're sniffing around on this thing, so we've been going down that path. We released a petition, of course, to help realtors fight the iBuyer and they're misleading the public and the consumers into believing that they're cheaper and faster, specifically cheaper, which they are not. They are significantly more expensive, but the consumer's being duped. And it appears that NAR is doing nothing about it, or anybody else is doing anything about it. So we started a petition to hopefully get some eyeballs on it.
Love it.
But it's also happening, of course, and we've almost kind of gotten a little deadened to it in the mortgage space.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Kind of have. I think we just fought that battle a little bit longer, and it's a little bit newer for the realtors.
The battle still continues, right? The battle still rages on, doesn't it? Or what's your thoughts on it?
I mean, I was thinking about being, if you're a realtor or a lender today, like, I feel like it's like Game of Thrones. I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, and like every fight scene ever, like you're the guy with the sword, and like you look to the left and there's iBuyer, and then there's Quicken, and then there's, technology, and you're just fighting off everybody. And like everywhere you turn, there's a challenge right now. I don't know that it's been, for different reasons, tougher than 2019 to be a realtor or lender than the last 20 years. I mean, it's extremely tough. Everybody's trying to steal your market share, including all the iBuyer companies and Zillow and Redfin and Quicken. And so you got that going on. And then like, you're okay, well, I want to fight back, but your technology is like your sword, and you got to learn the technology to even fight back. And that's got to be tough, And so it's really tough to fight back. But, just like in those battles, you got two sides that rush at each other.
Yeah.
For some reason, that's how we fought back in the day. And then you start with like 100,000 on each side, and then it kind of thins out, and 50,000 and 10,000 shoulders, and then eventually only a couple hundred. Like that's, my response, and every realtor and lender's response should be, hey, I don't know exactly how I'm going to fend everybody off, but I'm going to fight. I'm going to continue to fight. I'm going to evolve. And if technology is my sword, I'm going to figure out how to use that. So it's got to be tough.
So let me ask you this then, because you're a lot closer to the battlefield than I am. Two things here I'd like to run past you for everybody that I think are going to be beneficial. One, you interviewed somebody recently who basically laid out, who's controlling the narrative. So I want you to touch on that just a little bit.
Okay.
But then also, being that we're in the street, hey, I'm a realtor now. I don't know if you know that, Ryan, but I'm a realtor now. I'm a member of NAR and everything.
Nice.
I am a realtor. Okay. In fact, I'm showing property Friday, Buster. Okay.
Nice.
But for those of us that are on the street, from the lending perspective, real estate perspective, just your thoughts on how do you combat this? So then who's got the narrative, and what's your thoughts on combating it? I mean, what do you feel, real quick?
I'm not at all trying to plug, our show, which thanks for supporting us for like 10 years, man. You and Brian have had our back for so long. I appreciate it. You guys provide value for the industry every day for the last decade. So again, thank you for doing that. Thank you for having our back. But not trying to plug our show, but we have 3 really good interviews. 2 have released. One is kind of about the iBuyer conversation. That's Kenny Klaus, and that's on the website. I'm going to talk about that in a second. The second one just dropped today, and it's with Steve Sims. If you don't know Steve Sims, he's basically an international superstar, and his job is to make millionaire and billionaire dreams come true. Super interesting guy, awesome book. And that interview talks about how we should respond. And then the third one's with Steve Harney with Keeping Current Matters, and that one's going to air next week. All 3 of those really talk about your question and how should we respond. And the first one, Kenny Klaus, he does 500 transactions a year. He's got a pretty cool stat.
Is he a realtor or a loan guy?
He's a realtor in Arizona.
Okay.
Yep, thanks for slowing me down. Realtor in Arizona. Sometimes I skip over some of the details, so I appreciate that.
No problem.
He's closed a transaction every day for the last 10 years, which I think is a really cool stat.
Pretty significant.
Yeah. And then 500 transactions last year. And he's been all over iBuyer for an entire, I think actually 4 or 5 years now. And so he runs iBuyer group for any of the realtors like yourself that really want to have this conversation at a high level in a private group. He runs iBuyer Hub on Facebook. It's a private group that you can request to get in. And so they talk about best practices at a high level and how to really respond to these folks. And so one of his several takeaways, I mean, this guy dropped a ton of knowledge. Kenny's awesome. Is iBuyer is doing a great job, and love you, Nar, but a little bit shame on you here, but they're controlling the conversation and the narrative around iBuyer. And so if they say that it's faster and cheaper and better, guess what? It is, because there's not a competing force to offset that.
Right.
As lenders, as realtors, as organizations, Nar, we have to do a better job fighting back to control that narrative, because if only one narrative's out there, guess what a consumer believes? The one voice.
The one and only one that's there, yeah.
Exactly. So we have to do a better job collectively, NARs of the world, and individually, realtors and lenders of the world, saying, hey, this is what it really is. Another really good takeaway from that interview, so smart. Instead of making them a competitor, you know what he says to his consumers? He says, look, iBuyer is a thing. Redfin, Zillow, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? We're going to get you their offers. So what does he do? He turns them into a buyer, not a competitor. Like, yeah, sure. He acknowledges them. He controls the conversation, the narrative. Guess what? I'll go get all those offers for you, and I'll get some traditional ones too. And you know, because you're smart, Frank, those traditional offers are always going to net out versus the 80 cents on the dollar, you know, iBuyer option that sure may close in 2 days, but you know that seller's not going to be ready to close in 2 days or move out. And they want top dollar for their house. So it's so brilliant to see him go, yeah, they're actually just a buyer to me. They're not a competitor. And I was like, Kenny, now I know why you close 500 transactions.
I'm doing this too.
Right? So smart. And that was like just 2 takeaways. I had to slow him down because he spoke so fast. But that's a great interview for anybody that's really tiptoeing into iBuyer, because it's still relatively new. And I appreciate you and Brian being all over this thing. iBuyer Hub is really cool. That conversation with Kenny Klaus is really cool. And that's what we got to do. We can't control iBuyer. We can't control Zillow, Redfin, but we can control how we respond to those folks. And that's all we can control. So we better get our pencils and knives sharpened.
That's a fantastic takeaway. I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to certainly reach out to Kenny Klaus.
You should have him on the show, man.
I'm going to get him on the show. Yeah,
wealth of knowledge. He's an iBuyer expert, and you guys are all over this.
And maybe he'll get behind the petition. I mean, I hope so.
I'm sure he will.
So what else do we want to talk about? There was something else so we got controlling narrative. Yes. And how to combat it. Well, I think you kind of wrapped those questions up.
Yeah. With the lender side, again,
lender side.
We've come, like you said, we've kind of become numb to it because we fought it a little bit longer. We're both in the same boat. Traditional real estate and lending are both in the same boat, and we're fighting off this new evolution of real estate and lending. That isn't necessarily better. I get it. I don't want to fight technology. I don't want to say it's horrible, but it's not necessarily better. And so the other 2 takeaways from the Steve Sims and Steve Harney interviews is, again, how do we respond to these things? And so what I would would say for individual, if you don't have a team and you're an individual realtor lender, or if you do have teams or you're an organization, do a deep dive audit, and you're asking yourself, a couple of questions. The first one is, why would anybody even do business with myself, my team, or my corporation in the first place?
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
And Steve Sims, and his job is to really dive in and find people's whys and passion. He says, ask 3 times. And so the first time you ask yourself, your team, or your organization, if you're doing this exercise, the response is going to be what they think they think. You ask the second time, no, really, let me tell. Like, let me hear your answer. The second time, they're going to say what they think you want to hear because they're getting pressed. You ask a third time, typically, what you're going to find out is what they actually feel, like what they honestly feel the third time. And so when you ask your teams, your organizations, and yourself these questions, don't go with the first response. Really dig in, 3-4 times. And so why would anybody do work and trust myself, my company, or my organization? What's the honest answer there? Why would what sets me apart from Zillow, Redfin, and iBuyer?
Yeah.
we should know that, like that, the elevator speech type thing. We should know that. And I don't know that most of us do, because it is a relatively new challenge. And so when somebody and a consumer asks you that question and you get caught on your heels, the battle's almost already over.
Yeah.
We got to lean into this thing and do our homework. Again, Kenny talks about that. I know more about iBuyer than iBuyer does, because I've been following them for 4 years.
Right.
That's the appropriate response, is knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So, do a deep dive with your teams, yourself and your organization, and ask yourself those tough questions. And if you don't have the answers, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. At least you're starting the homework. Okay,
right.
Second part of that is, okay, why would somebody trust me? Let's figure that out. What am I doing to control the narrative? Or is Quicken winning the battle? Or is iBuyer winning the battle? Do I have any collateral? You guys have put out collateral every day for a decade, right? You have tons of collateral. And so you control a lot of the narrative, right, for our industries. Right. But what is the individual realtor or loan officer doing? What collateral are they putting out into the world to attract those buyers or control that conversation?
Yeah, good.
Very few of us are doing anything.
Right.
Right? Okay, so look yourself in the mirror, be like, okay, that's true, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to finally start putting out collateral. I'm going to take Frank and Brian's advice and get into video marketing and start putting out my own collateral, right?
Right.
So it's really just having the stones to look at yourself and admit that we're short here and here, and then actually spending the time to figure it out.
To fix it.
Yeah, and fix it. This isn't, hey, individual realtor and loan officer, I'm not picking on you, because there's entire organizations that don't know this.
Sure.
I mean, not to give too much away, but Frank and I were talking before the show, and we would love to see your advocacy groups fight harder for you, right? That's in a whole organization that doesn't necessarily know their why as to what sets them apart as a realtor organization. Because if they did, it would be ultra clear, and that collateral will be out there to the world to fight the iBuyer conversation.
Right.
That make sense?
Does. Ryan, great stuff, man. Appreciate it. Obviously, guys, you're going to want to go ahead and check out the resource.tv if you haven't already from the show. There's a link down below where you can go straight to their website and you can see the other interviews that Ryan was talking about that sound very, very good. And with that, leave us your comments down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. We'd love to do that. Do us a favor, forward, share the show. And if you're meeting us for the first time as well, go ahead and subscribe. There's a subscribe button somewhere here on the page. And with that, Ryan, can't thank you enough for being on the show. It's great to have you back. And just miss you guys big time. We got to get up there and hang out with you in Washington State again for some stupid reason. I mean, we never needed to have big reasons in the past. We don't need a big reason right now. So miss you guys when you get up there. So thanks again for being on the show, man. And you guys have a great day today, and make something happen. We'll catch you later from the Natural Estate Post.